Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, just wrote a blog about the intelligence age, the new age that we are entering, where humans and artificial intelligence will combine our strengths to make the world more prosperous than we can even imagine. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I want to talk to you today about Sam Altman's recent blog called The Intelligence Age, where he makes a claim that we have entered into a new age. Of course, historically, there have been many, many ages, including things like the industrial age, the computer age, the information age with the internet and everything. That could arguably be the age that we lived in up to the one that we have just entered. And Sam is arguing that we have entered into the intelligence age, where artificial intelligence will play a very important role. So let's go ahead and read this together. In the next couple of decades, we will be able to do things that would have seemed like magic to our grandparents. I would argue that's probably already the case. I mean, if you take any grandparents' generation since like 1900 or something, if you project forward 60 or 70 years, you're looking at just amazing things, right? I'm almost 60 now. It's incredible that I'm going to be 60. By the way, if you want to give me an early birthday present, subscribe to the channel. I would love to reach 100,000 subscribers by my 60th birthday. It's in late January. But anyway, if you dial it back to 1965 when I was born and look at the state of the world then versus what it is now, it's kind of unbelievable, right? It would have seemed like magic to anyone who was, say, 30 or 40 or 50 years old at that time. Like, for example, my parents, they would have thought that any of this stuff that exists now is just complete magic. So I would argue that at least for the last 150 years or so, every 60 years, every 50 or 60 years, the state of the world changes so radically that people who were alive in the earlier state would have thought, if you were projected them forward within their lifetimes without them going through all of the steps, of course, if you go through the steps like I have and many of you have, then of course it seems very normal. But if you just suddenly took somebody from 1965 to today, or alternatively from 1900 to 1960, it just would have seemed like magic. But anyway, that being said, if you even took somebody from 2000, the year 2000, to now to 2024, that's only about 25 years. That's a much shorter distance. That would seem like magic as well. I mean, just think about it. The internet was just barely taking off. Amazon was a bookstore. Mobile phones were just getting going. There was no such thing as smartphones. Streaming video was a pipe dream, and of course, artificial intelligence as well. So anyway, I think what he's talking about here is a compression of the distance to get from now to magic. That's what he's talking about here. Anyway, he says this phenomenon is not new, obviously, as we were just talking about, but it will be newly accelerated, as I was also just talking about. People have become dramatically more capable over time. We can already accomplish things now that our predecessors would have believed to be impossible. It's really true. As a standard middle-class person, I can fly all over the world. I can scuba dive. If I had somewhat more money, on the order of tens of millions of dollars, I could buy myself a ride into space. All of these things were literally impossible 150 years ago. Even if you were the wealthiest person in the world, you couldn't do these things. And now, as a middle to upper middle class person, I can do many of these things. And as a wealthy person, I could do things that people couldn't even have imagined back then. Continuing on here, we are more capable not because of genetic change, in other words, we have not evolved, but because we benefit from the infrastructure of society being way smarter and more capable than any one of us. In an important sense, society itself is a form of advanced intelligence. I very much agree. I think that what we're looking at is almost like a meta brain or something like that. The billions of people on the planet plus all of our compute devices are effectively the neurons in this meta brain, and we are able to be much, much more intelligent than any one of us individually could be. And continuing with the theme of grandparents, our grandparents and the generations that came before them built and achieved great things. They contributed to the scaffolding of human progress that we all benefit from. AI will give people tools to solve hard problems and help add new struts to that scaffolding that we couldn't have figured out on our own. The story of progress will continue, and our children will be able to do things that we can't, and that is very much true. It won't happen all at once, but we'll soon be able to work with AI that helps us accomplish much more than we ever could without AI. Eventually, we can each have a personal AI team full of virtual experts in different areas working together to create almost anything we can imagine. Our children will have virtual tutors who can provide personalized instruction in any subjects, in any language, and at whatever pace they need. We can imagine similar ideas for better healthcare, the ability to create any kind of software someone can imagine, and much more. I personally, as a teacher, think these virtual tutors who can provide personalized instruction in any subject will be game-changing. I know from teaching that there's only so much that I as an individual can do with a class of, say, 20 people, or potentially 300, right, if you're teaching a lecture class, and you only meet them a few hours a week and you give them homework and you give them tests and things. But just imagine if you have a tutor who is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whenever you have a question, and can go at your own pace and knows who you are and what you need and what kind of learner you are. Everyone is going to maximize their potential. Not like everyone is going to suddenly become Einstein, but everyone will go from, getting this much out of their potential to getting this much out of their potential. That will be amazing. And here we get into Sam's optimism. With these new abilities, we can have shared prosperity to a degree that seems unimaginable today. In the future, everyone's lives can be better than anyone's life is now. That's a pretty bold statement. Prosperity alone doesn't necessarily make people happy. Very true. There are plenty of miserable rich people, but it would meaningfully improve the lives of people around the world. In other words, money doesn't make you happy, but the lack of money definitely makes you unhappy, right? If you don't have enough money to have basic food and shelter security, things like that, you're obviously going to be stressed out and unhappy. So a certain degree of money is really necessary to allow people to flourish and to be happy. It's not necessary that you will be happy. Many people are not happy who have plenty of money, but at least the scaffolding for happiness is much more available to you if you do have that basic level of money. Continuing on, here is one narrow way to look at human history. After thousands of years of compounding scientific discovery and technological progress, we have figured out how to melt sand, add some impurities, arrange it with astonishing precision at extraordinarily tiny scale into computer chips, run energy through it, and end up with systems capable of creating increasingly capable artificial intelligence. So basically, Sam is saying here that you can melt sand and turn it into thought. I mean, that's a pretty reasonable way of thinking about that. Of course, billions of years of evolution have taught carbon and water how to think as well. That would be us, where carbon and water and a bunch of impurities. But of course, that was natural selection. And of course, it took billions of years. What we're talking about here is a human lifespan, right? Less than 100 years to go from the first transistor to where we are now. That is remarkable progress. And it's not using carbon. It's using a silicon-based, thinking life form or whatever you want to call it. This, as in turning sand into thought, may turn out to be the most consequential fact about all of history so far. It is possible that we will have super intelligence in a few thousand days. That's just a few years. It may take longer, but I'm confident we'll get there. How did we get to the doorstep of the next leap in prosperity? And I would say ability to think, intelligence, in other words, in 3 words: deep learning worked. When I was a child, I thought deeply about artificial intelligence. It probably had to do with when I grew up in the 1970s, when AI had gone through its boom and bust cycle, and we were kind of entering into an AI winter. Everyone was very skittish about artificial intelligence and everything. And I saw the sort of classical way of doing artificial intelligence, which was very logic-based at the time. But when I was a child growing up, I thought to myself, why not mimic the human brain? Why not try to do what the human brain does? And that's basically what deep learning is. It's artificial neural networks. The artificial neural network is artificial brains. Now, these brains are still far smaller than human brains. They don't have the same kind of connections, but we have come a long way. We've gotten pretty darn close to mimicking biology. At least in a functional way, obviously not a biological way, but in a functional way, we've come reasonably close to imitating how the human brain and other mammalian brains think. And that is pretty remarkable. As Sam says here, deep learning worked. That was not a given. 15 years ago, people would have laughed at this idea. Even 10 years ago, even after AlexNet in 2012, I think people still would have laughed at it and said, this is not the way the future is going to develop. But I could see this all the way back in the 70s and early 80s. I was like, this has got to be the way that this is going to work out. It's not going to be logic. It's going to be mimicking the human brain. And in retrospect, at least at this point, it appears that that line of thinking was correct. And now expanding this to 15 words, deep learning worked, got predictably better with scale, and we dedicated increasing resources to it. All of these things are true. Without the dedication of increasing resources, without GPUs, without tensor processing units, without dedicated ASICs and amazing amounts of software development and everything, this would not have happened. Certainly not as quickly, but the resources have been provided and the gains have been made, and they've been very, very rapid. Continuing on, that's really it. Humanity discovered an algorithm that could really truly learn any distribution of data, or really the underlying, quote, rules that produce any distribution of data, very, very true, to a shocking degree of precision. The more compute and data available, the better it gets at helping people solve hard problems. I find that no matter how much time I spend thinking about this, I can never really internalize how consequential this is. These neural networks are at heart arbitrary function approximators, and that means that they're able to approximate any kind of mathematical activity. And if the brain, if human beings and biology is really at heart chemistry, which it probably is. And if chemistry is at heart physics, which it is, I mean, all of these stair steps go down. At the end of it, math describes physics, and artificial neural networks can approximate very, very closely any kind of math function you want to throw at it. And that means that we are able to approximate anything that humans do, any kind of intelligence, using this medium. And that is pretty remarkable, and it is hard to wrap your brain around. Continuing on with the blog, there are a lot of details we still have to figure out, but it's a mistake to get distracted by any particular challenge. Deep learning works, and we will solve the remaining problems. We can say a lot of things about what may happen next, but the main one is that AI is going to get better with scale, and that will lead to meaningful improvements to the lives of people around the world. AI models will soon serve as autonomous personal assistants who carry out specific tasks on our behalf, like coordinating medical care on your behalf. At some point further down the road, AI systems are going to get so good that they help us make better next-generation systems and make scientific progress across the board. Honestly, in a way, that is what I'm the most excited about, is new fundamental discoveries that AI enable that we humans just have not been able to come up with yet. The understanding of how gravity and time and quantum mechanics all work together. If an AI can do that before I pass away and I can get transmitted that information in a way that I can understand it, I would consider that to be a very profound gift from the universe to me. Anyway, continuing on, technology brought us from the Stone Age to agricultural age and then to the industrial age. From here, the path to the intelligence age is paved with compute, energy, and human will. If we want to put AI into the hands of as many people as possible, we need to drive down the cost of compute and make it abundant, which requires lots of energy and chips. If we don't build enough infrastructure, AI will be a very limited resource that wars get fought over, and that becomes mostly a tool for rich people. So very, very interesting point here. He's arguing for the democratization of this artificial intelligence, while at the same time, OpenAI is notoriously not open. They are very, very closed. So this is a really interesting stance that Sam Altman is taking. I agree with it. I think that everything should be democratized. It's just interesting to see how OpenAI is not following this path at all at this point. As Sam says, we need to act wisely but with conviction. The dawn of the intelligence age is a momentous development with very complex and extremely high-stakes challenges. It will not be an entirely positive story, that never is, but the upside is so tremendous that we owe it to ourselves and the future to figure out how to navigate the risks in front of us. I believe the future is going to be so bright that no one can do it justice by trying to write about it now. A defining characteristic of the intelligence age will be massive prosperity. Although it will happen incrementally, astounding triumphs, fixing the climate, establishing a space colony, and the discovery of all physics, yay, will eventually become commonplace. With nearly limitless intelligence and abundant energy, the ability to generate great ideas, and the ability to make them happen, we can do quite a lot. As we have seen with other technologies, there will also be downsides, and we need to start working now to maximize AI's benefits while minimizing its harms. As one example, we expect that this technology can cause a significant change in labor markets, both good and bad, in the coming years, but most jobs will change more slowly than most people think, I hope so, and I have no fear that we'll run out of things to do, even if they don't look like, quote, real jobs to us today. People have an innate desire to create and to be useful to each other, and AI will allow us to amplify our own abilities like never before. As a society, we will be back in an expanding world, and we can again focus on playing positive-sum games. So just as a quick antecedent to this, take the game of chess. In the mid-1990s, AI ended up being able to defeat the best chess players, and now AI is leaps and bounds ahead of any human being. There's no way a human being could ever compete with the best artificial intelligence, and yet people still play chess, people still watch chess, people still have chess tournaments, all of that kind of stuff. They don't pay to watch two AIs play each other, that's boring, but they are very interested in and will even pay for two human beings to play against each other. So I think that there is hope for humanity because we like it. Even if machines can do it better than us, we still like it better to watch humans do it. The same is true for craftsmanship as well. You know, you can go to IKEA and you can buy a desk, and that can be great and it can cost you $150, or you could pay thousands for a human being to do it by hand, and a lot of people will pay those thousands of dollars. Even though functionally the desk from IKEA is identical to the desk that the human makes, people love the craftsmanship, they love the story, they love the human creativity and the human effort and all of those things, and that matters to people. And I think that's important, and that's an important caveat to put in the way of robotics and artificial intelligence in the digital world just taking over all jobs and humans having no importance anymore. I think instead our importance will become much more self-defined and much less defined by the needs of society society, it will be defined by our own needs. And that will be a lovely future. I hope we can get there. I hope we don't end up having too much strife in the meantime, because I think a lot of people will be very concerned about losing what they think of as their identity, their means of making a living. But I think if people can make that leap to understand that they get to do what they want now, they get to create what they want rather than having to do what society needs them to do all the time, I think people in general will end up being happier in the long run than they are right now, assuming we can bridge this chasm to get there. And speaking of that, how Sam concludes this blog is very apropos. Many of the jobs we do today would have looked like trifling wastes of time to people a few hundred years ago. Very, very true. But nobody is looking back at the past wishing they were a lamplighter or a farmer who was out there plowing a field by yourself or something. I mean, there are farmers now, but farmers have a lot of technology involved. Nobody's sitting there going, wow, I really wish that I could dig up a field, till a field by hand and cut the grass by hand and things like that, right? People don't go like, wow, I pine for those days. We're very happy to have machines that can do that for us. And as Sam concludes, if a lamplighter could see the world today, he would think the prosperity all around him was unimaginable, and that is very true. And if we could fast forward 100 years from today, the prosperity all around us would feel just as unimaginable. So where does that leave us? Sam leaves us with a very optimistic view of the future. I think that there are going to be some serious bumps in the road. I think there's going to be a lot of societal strife as we try to overcome these things. I hope that that societal strife does not degenerate into us going back into a dark ages. That is quite possible. That could happen. But I'm really, really hopeful that we will overcome that and we'll get to the point where artificial general intelligence is there and maybe eventually artificial superintelligence. And then when you add on top of that embodied AI in the form of robots, we could be looking at a future which will be unimaginably better than it is today, and I hope that we can get there. I know Sam wants us all to get there. I think that he is honest about that. I know a lot of people have bad opinions about Sam Altman, but I do think his heart is in the right place, at least on this front. He really wants what's best for humanity, and I think that is all to the good that we're pushing that direction. I know OpenAI is not living up to what they could be living up to in terms of making themselves more open. I hope that they decide to alter course at some point, but no matter what, Sam's vision of the future is really worth fighting for, and I know we could all get behind that. All right, so those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, if you don't mind liking and subscribing, it really helps out the channel. Again, it would be lovely to get to 100,000 subscribers before my 60th birthday. Let's go for that. And in the meantime, I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.